So
Yeah, who else are you expecting though? Is that real?
the mayor is in the building.
Mayor Krishna Courtney.
So I will call to order the meeting of Finance Committee for November 17th. It's 4 o'clock. I am Chair Deanna Gwen.
Shane Matthews.
Paul Tigan.
And staff.
Josh Nicholson, Chief Financial Officer.
Caroline Buck, Budget Manager.
Brian Martin, Public Works Director.
Dan Atchison, City Attorney. Jeremy Morgan, Financial Reporting Manager.
Gretchen Bennett, Acting Capacity Community Services. Shona Thomas, Admin Analyst.
Tammy Stars, Engineering Admin Manager.
And James Wharton Hess, I'm an analyst in the budget office.
Thank you and welcome.
Yeah, we have the fire chief online.
Oh. Chief, did you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, we used to.
I'm sorry, was that for me?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Dave Gerboth, Fire Chief for the City of Salem. Nice to see you all.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And for the record, the mayor has joined us and city manager as well. And did everyone have an opportunity to review the minutes? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. We don't have anyone here for public comment, no one online, right? Okay, so moving on, action items, we have the C9 Capital Improvement Program Policy update by James Wharton Hess.
All right.
So, yes, James Wharton Hess, I'm an analyst in the budget office, and I'm just gonna present the Budget Committee recommended update to Council Policy C9, which is our capital improvement plan. You may remember back in May, the Budget Committee unanimously, I do believe, recommended an update to Council Policy C9, and specifically to recommend to City Council an update to Council Policy number C9 that would require staff to analyze and report on the city's organizational capacity to fund future maintenance of projects proposed to be added to the CIP. That red addition to, let's see, what is it? Section 3C1VI, and that's in your packet as well. Sort of fulfills that to the word more or less. So essentially, the CIP Staff Review Committee is already doing this. Speaking with Tammy, it sounds like they are able to incorporate a consideration of operating impacts, specifically financial, into their scoring process for this year's CIP, and CIP projects in this next upcoming proposed CIP will include scores for that. So they're able to administratively, we're already sort of doing this. City Council approval of that policy would sort of codify that practice. And then the goal in the future is to sort of have the CIP that will include an estimation of the operating impact in real dollars in the document. So I think that's a long-term vision, but sort of starting off immediately, we're already sort of incorporating this into our practice. So the recommendation would be to support the Budget Committee's recommended updates to Council Policy number C9 for City Council adoption. And I can bring it back to the sort of language in question.
Do you need a motion for this?
Can I ask a question real quick?
No.
Oh, get out of here quick. When it says analyze and report on the city's organizational capacity, so I assume when you're scoring CIP projects, that's the analyze aspect, that you would analyze how this impacts the long-term maintenance. So, but am I right on that part?
Yeah, I think that's it.
So what is the scoring weight on this? Like, I know equity is 25% of the score. How much of the score is part of this aspect?
It'd be 10 total points.
How does that? I don't know what that. I don't know.
10 out of
100. Okay. Got it. Okay.
I guess I should clarify. Did we take some points away from something else to still stay at 100?
Yes, we did.
What did the takeaway?
I think, um. I think we took one from council goals. And one from level of service, I believe.
So were we not originally at 100 then?
No, we were. But we had to, since we added the scoring criteria, we had to lower some scores to make it.
Yeah, we shared 5 points out of one and 5 points out of the other.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
This came from the motion that member Dixon brought, right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay.
And I think Paul had it.
Counselor Tigan, did you have a question?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, I'm just curious, thinking about Member Dixon's motion and the conversation that we had, and when I'm trying to put my budget committee hat back on and thinking about when we're looking at CIP projects and what the goal there is, I appreciate like rolling it into the scoring because that's really how we determine, overall alignment of these projects. But in some ways, it's like a little bit obscured what the real question is. So I'm sort of curious, how do you imagine going about determining, is this a 0 points, we have like no capacity to support this in the future, or this is 10 points where we fully have the capacity to do this? How you'd imagine scoring those projects, say in the next coming CIP. And then maybe that's question number one. And then the second question is like, is it something more than dollars? And because your slide showed like, yeah, later we'd like to actually be able to say how much it's going to be.
I think so. So how we've set it up is. I was ready for your question. So how we've set it up is a project would get the most points, 5 points, if the operational costs are negligible, resulting in the leaf life cycle cost. If it was a neutral impact, it would get a 3. And then if operational costs were significantly increased, it would get a 0. And then our other recommendation is in the CIP book itself, where we have the project description, we'll be adding operating impacts. So this first year, it might say, with a new playground, maintenance costs may go up with this new playground. So there'll be some verbiage in there that'll tell you what the operating costs are until we get into the data, maybe a per acre or square foot of something. And that's what we're working on. So that's what we're starting with. And then we'll be gathering the data. So I would assume next CIP, we would have be able to provide some costs. Though they're not going to be perfect, but we'll be able to provide some data for that.
If I could just add one thing, which you mentioned 5, 3, or 0, there's a weighting factor of a multiplied by 2, so that's how you get to the 10. So
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe this gets addressed somehow else in the scoring, but the total cost for maintenance of a playground system, if it's on the CIP, okay, it costs us over $100,000 to install, versus the overall cost to sweep or to maintain a new road, that's being built as part of a development. Feels like it's kind of two different questions, and mostly I'm just preparing you for when Member Dixon asks questions, because he has even better ones than me. So I'm just trying to get the questions warmed up a little bit. But I do feel like that real dollar amount matters to the budget committee, right? Like you could imagine, okay, this year's CIP has $42 million in projects in year one. Those are the ones we're actually going to fund. I'm making all these numbers up. But the cost 10 years from now to maintenance, all the things in year one is X dollars as an estimate. Whereas, like, if you're just giving them a score, you could say, oh, well, on average, they score about 3 points. You know, it's just like a little bit less tangible. Like you can't really sink your teeth into it as much.
If I may, I think the intent is actually both. So this first year, it would just be incorporated into the score. And then the idea is in future CIPs, once we really hammer out the methodology for how to calculate that, is that in each project detail report, it would show the annual maintenance obligation with a real tangible number, which I think will be pretty stark difference between like a playground, a street, or say a full park development, right? And those should be very different numbers. That's the intent, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Any other questions? You look like you're gonna say something, but
Well,
you're
I'm gonna ask one more. I'm just
Of
gonna
course,
trying to
please.
defer to the other members, of course. Maybe it's easier to have this conversation now rather than, you know, later, but I guess as you've been doing it, I'm curious if you've looked at it and would imagine either this scoring mechanism in its current form or, Josh, to your point, the stark numbers that might come out of the real dollars. Does it seem like it's going to change policy? Like, would you expect it to be so dramatic that the budget committee might say like, oh, wow, we really need to think about this more? Or like, do you feel like there's a tangible impact from adding this to the scoring mechanism on the horizon?
I could go ahead and share. This is definitely going to add an element that we haven't really had in the past. I mean, we've had some areas where we've talked about lowering life cycle costs, but we haven't applied it across all the projects. So it's a first start. Is it going to impact the project significantly? All the projects will still probably be in the CIP, but maybe the priority will shift. So things that were maybe in year 2, maybe in year 5 now, and something may move up because generally there are still needs. I do think that Josh pointed out the stark costs of what this means when we get those numbers. Could be eye-opening to some extent. But there's so much that goes into it because there's, say with a park, all of a sudden you have annual costs of maintaining it, right? So there's, I don't know, every couple of weeks or a month, you got to go mow the lawn, you got to clean things up, you got to clean restrooms. There's a lot of stuff. With a new street, you know, for the first 10 to 15 years, all you're really doing is sweeping it, right? And so you won't see those costs up front, but over time, you know, you're going to have to overlay that street and do repairs. So we have to figure out how you build that in, like into the early years versus the life cycle years. So there's more analysis that we really need to figure out to bring those numbers back. But I mean, anything new, generally speaking, unless it's replacing something that's old and existing. So if you're replacing something old and existing, your life cycle costs are going to go down. So that's a benefit. But anytime you add something new, there's going to be a cost that you haven't had before. So it's really trying to zero in on what those are going to be. And then with it, there's different fund sources that fund different things. So what funds a park is different than what funds a street, and what's the state of the street fund versus the parks fund or general fund. I mean, it's all, we're just going to have to weigh all of those things. I hope that helps.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. I mean, I'm curious to see what the impact would be, and I could kind of imagine, because it is a new element to the scoring system and something that the budget committee asked for, that you might consider in the next CIP, just either as part of your presentation or whatever the case may be, if we move forward with this, finding a way to flag, like, here's 5 examples of ways that we scored this in our current CIP. You know, so people have some sense of it, because otherwise they're just going to look at that scoring number that every project has and sort of wonder like, oh, I wonder how much of this is that score. I'd have to go into the books to know. So that's just kind of maybe a a communication recommendation about it.
Kind of piggyback on that, if that's okay, like, I agree, like, I think some sort of examples and maybe one that specifically where the outcome changed. If there is one, based on just because I've got, as I'm sitting here and I'm kind of listening to the whole thing, again, really hit me, I guess, there will be likely projects that we don't move forward with, or at least they get reprioritized at the bottom of the list that may have been at the top based on our roll scoring criteria. But now if it's going to impact the general fund on a long-term maintenance schedule, probably that one's not going to be able to score high enough to, I mean, I'm just assuming, right, that weighted score would have to. That's going to impact whether or not that one should be the first one we do versus something like the street, which won't have the short-term cuts. So I think that this could have negative impact that Member Dixon and the rest of the council weren't prepared for when we made the motion, or the rest of the budget committee. So I would say if you have ones where it has impacted the priority list, to be able to see those from a budget committee standpoint, so that we can really assess then, it's like, was this really the right move? Logically, it seems like it is to me, but maybe there's outcomes that aren't anticipated.
Anyone else? So, are you looking for a motion from us?
Yes, please.
Do I have a motion?
I would suggest this addition to C9 policy, move to council for recommendation.
Second.
Okay. Seconded by Tigan, and all in favor? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Sorry, lost my place. Management update and information items.
Yes, thank you. Two things for your consideration discussion. The first is the investment performance review for the quarter ended September 30th, 2025. I don't have a lot I'm going over here, but if there's questions, we can certainly look at that. If not, we can just jump right into our next item.
Councilor Tigan, you didn't have any questions on the investment report? Okay.
I reviewed it. Thank you for including it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just for everyone's reference, we do post those on the city website. So if you're ever wondering where to find those, I think they're under financial reports, and it shows lots of years of those. If you don't want to go into finance committee minutes to look for them or anything like that.
Do you have any questions? Mayor? Thank you. I think we can move on then.
Great. So we wanted to give a preview of expenditure assumptions for the 5-year forecast. A few caveats here. One, there's some highlighted ones that we just don't know where we're landed yet. And then just the overall, these are still preliminary, so there could still be some changes between now and when we deliver the forecast in January. As we've said in the past, and we'll continue to say, it's the latest, best information we have right now. So the information is going to get better next month than what we have this month, so there can still be some tweaks. The top, we have cost of living assumptions. It's hard to see on here, but italicized text represents a rate outside a current labor contract. I think I mentioned this at our last budget committee meeting. We have lots of contracts that are open, 4 big ones for fiscal year 2027. We did council ratified SPU and SPU-S, so that was one down that we know of. And they actually didn't negotiate for a cost of living adjustment. They got a deferred comp match and a shift differential. So that's why you see a rare 0 on there. Other personal services costs. Notable changes from last year. So the PPO medical, that's our self-insured medical plan. We're looking at a 16% for next year. And that was preceded by an 18% that just went into place or that will go into place January 1st. And this is just really to balance out our claims experience and also our, so if you're familiar with self-insurance at all, we have stop loss insurance. So we cap individualized claims for an individual member at a certain amount. So that insurance is going up just due to our claims experience. Also, we've had several large claims over that stop loss amount, and the premiums go up accordingly. We're also seeing higher rates with Kaiser Medical. I haven't really dug into this one too much. It started at a higher rate, even for the current year. This is just forecasting out what it's looking at. We have seen more of our employees opt into the medical plan. So some of this is just the pooling, normalizing, I think, as there's more members. No increases for dental or vision. We're looking at a large adjustment for workers' compensation, 34.41% overall funds, followed by 10% increases. We're actually seeing a decrease in life insurance and disability insurance. If you're familiar with that market, things are looking a little bit better in that area. So we're seeing rates decrease. Counselor Gwynn, you asked about PERS. Right now we have in the model just the same rates we had for last year, just carried out one additional biennium. We're still waiting for advisory rates early December from the PERS actuary, which will help inform if we want to stick with these forecasted rates that we're fairly comfortable with, or if we want to make a change. So that's something we'll be considering. We'll bring back, assuming you hold a meeting on December 15th, we'll bring that back to you then. For materials and services, so just so you know how this works.
Hey, Josh, sorry to interrupt. I don't, maybe hard to see. Can you go back to the PERS real quickly? I just want to make sure that you're projecting 30, 35, 36% year over year increase on PERS rates. That's what the model is based on?
No, I appreciate the question. So this is the rate on wages. So this is not the year over year increase. This is actually the rate charged.
Okay, great. I think I saw other percentage change. Okay, but that's not what that one is. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, this one's a little bit different, and that confusion happens fairly often. So we'll think about a better way to display that. Maybe we'll talk about both, right? Because I think in some cases, even this difference here, 30.29 to 35.48, it only looks like a 5% increase, but it's a large increase change, dollar amount for sure. But yes, so these are the rate on wages charged.
Thank you.
While we're stopped, can you tell me, you kind of went by a little fast, life insurance and disability are down. Why is that? You said it's.
So these are benefits we offer employees, and we go out to market with our broker every year or every few years when it's up for renewal. And they just came in at a lower rate than they have in the past.
Okay, thank you.
Which is, life insurance, the rates have come down just a little bit from where they were years ago.
Thanks.
While we are stopped, so with the workers' comp, the 34.41, what's the reason that we're having such a large increase this year, and then we're kind of projecting the 10 more back to standard?
Yeah, so I'll answer really basically, and then James can fill in. So you might remember we did a liability. So we did a mid-year liability rate change this last year. We didn't do one for workers' comp. We just have to do this large increase to get caught up on where our experience is. So we have dollars going out, but the premiums aren't matching. So this gets us to a more fully funded status, 34.4 followed by 10% increases. It gets us to meeting our reserve policy by that 5th year. So right now we're well underfunded. But as long as claims match expectations, after 5 years, we'll be at that fully funded rate, and that's just what it takes to get there.
Yeah, and we're just backlogged, sort of. We're actually pretty close to a zero fund balance for workers' comp. So that initial influx of cash from that bigger rate increase helps sort of backfill the claims experience we didn't expect in the last few years. And then the 10% is still sort of remarkable. And that's just because that's sort of what we've seen. And you'll see in liability, the increase is actually much lower because we sort of, maybe we got over a hump. We had a few like really large claims outstanding that we sort of got over. But with workers' comp, we're just seeing this continue into perpetuity. There's no sort of hump that we need to get over. It's just sort of up and to the right.
I think we had a meeting a few months ago on the workman's comp. I think it might have been this finance meeting, but is that there were some like actions that were supposed to be, we were taking to try to curb that in some way? And do we know like whether we'll have, when will we know whether those actions will happen? So
Council, that was discussed in executive session, so we can update you on the council.
Gotcha.
I mean, part of this is the presumptive claims too, right? Like there's an increase in workers' compensation claims just because there are several claims that are now assumed to be workers or related to employment, like for fire and stuff.
So every 2 years, we do an actuarial report to determine what reserve level we should maintain. I think that's up this year or next year. I'll be curious what that tells us our reserve level should be. So I think liability, I think we are over, we've settled some claims and we should be at a better spot. I'm curious what workers' comp looks like. If that reserve requirement that's built into this 5-year rate forecast goes up or down.
Gotcha. Okay.
I would be shocked if it went down. Yeah.
Just moving on, materials and services, these apply across forecasts, unless there's specific information each department has. Using a general inflation factor of 3.3% in 27, and then 3% after that. Flat for gasoline and diesel. Internal charges, it does vary by department, but a larger increase there. Year 1, 8.46, followed by. So this is the like calculated change in personal services. So this might adjust a little bit as the forecasts and personal services costs are settled. Liability insurance, overall 3%, followed by 4s. So this is what James was mentioning, looking a little bit better for rate impacts. Motor pool rates, 11.2 or 11.12, followed by 4% increases. One thing that's driving this is they're just finishing up replacement of their vehicle lifts. So this includes a transfer to finish out that project. After that, it should settle more around that 4%. Radio communications, this says 17%. I have knowledge today that it should be closer to that 4%. So there was a forecast shift. And it looks like we'll be able to maintain the 4s throughout the forecast period. So that's good news. And then 911 services, we maintained our forecast rate from last year, 5.2%. So this is not determined necessarily by us. The user agencies have an advisory committee they put together to set the rate, and then it's voted on by all agencies. But I'll certainly advocate for this lower 5.2 as opposed to something higher. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Revenue assumptions, we're still working on those. So we'll bring those back in December.
Any questions, Counselor Tigan?
No, not. I just would say that I appreciate seeing what the rate is right now. Like for the motor pool, if the overall average is 11%, that the number here that you're showing, the 4% growth, isn't necessarily by the end of it, we're going to be charged, 27%. It's just that the real rate of what that means against our charge is it grows every year. So it's helpful to see where we're starting as a percentage.
Yeah, excellent point. One bit of context we could add on here, maybe in the future, is what what do we charge total for radio communications or motor pool? I mean, just to put some scale to it also.
No other questions, so thank you.
Just backing that up, I appreciate scale.
Yeah.
Concept of where we are, and what it means in the grand scheme.
You got nothing?
Okay. Thank you.
So that continued business, we have none. New business, do we need to talk about whether we're gonna have a meeting in December? Sounds like we need to,
It sounds like we certainly have things we can talk about.
right?
And the 15th feels a little further closer to away from Thanksgiving. That might be okay. Or-
Counselor Tigan, do you have your hand up?
Sorry, that's the little.
Oh, never mind.
Sure.
I saw little hands, so,
I don't think so.
okay. Are you okay with meeting in December on the 15th?
I have rocket ships. That's what I
There you
have. Sure, I will meet on the 15th. Yes.
Nice. So it sounds like we'll meet again
Perfect.
in December. So if there's nothing further, we're adjourned. We are adjourned.
See y'all in a little